Hey everybody, welcome to Low Friction Friday. Alright, today, I've had a bit of a high friction week, so I've had absolutely zero time to mentally prep any kind of deep dive topic. So I'm moving to a backup topic that I've had on my mind that in case a day like this came along, we can just have a bit of a fun chat about an area of interest, which is really what's going on with what a lot of bike stores tend to stock and recommend and why. There'll be a few obviously fun ins and outs as to what I think is happening in a lot of cases. And it's going to be great to get your thoughts with regards to what might be happening with your own local bike store or ones that you've seen in the past, and how your experiences have gone with with the products that they've recommended. So, all right, before we get into that, let's do some updates. First, we'll update on my rather non-low friction week, which is why I'm very rushed and unprepared today, even more so than usual. Okay, start with my outstanding performing high-end gaming laptop here. So thank you again to those. So I did do the thermal paste recommendation. So that was a bit of fun. But overall went pretty smoothly to do that. It's the first time I've actually delved into the innards of a laptop. But yeah, it was all fairly straightforward at the end of the day, and new thermal paste on. It's helped a little bit, but if I check the temps now, CPU usage is at flicking between basically 5 and 8%. And yet the core temps are sitting on pretty much between 77 and 85 degrees Celsius, with the fan dialed not quite up to full, but it's ramping itself pretty close to that, which is why you may hear some fan noise still. So it's still running really, really hot. The original thermal paste, it was pretty dry, so I was hoping for a better result from doing the thermal paste, but that's not so much. We got to the stage where the laptop has been crashing pretty much every 5 to 10 minutes, which makes work rather tricky. So I've had a fairly tricky week trying to get work done. We've had some issues with the actual, antivirus and protection software that seems to potentially be a large part of why it was crashing. Basically, every time it opened a protected browser, my browsers would crash, and half the time that would cause then the actual computer to crash. Turning the protected browser off in the settings didn't turn the protected browser off. It would always try to open one and cause a crash. So we've had to faff around with uninstalling and then now reinstalling a new protection software. But between the number of crashes and backups and everything this week, it's been a little bit hellish trying to actually operate. Apologies for last week's video. Apparently that came out in pretty low resolution. I have no idea why. It's set to record in 4096 by 2160. That's the default. But things did crash 7 times during filming last week, and not all clips made it to the backup during crashing. I had to re-record a whole bunch. It was all a bit of a nightmare, and I don't know why on export that it came out in standard definition, so apologies for that. Things have not crashed so far since uninstalling the previous software, despite the fact things are still running hot. So let's fingers crossed for filming today. We are currently now about 5 or 6 minutes in, and no crashing. So let's see. But yeah, apologies for last week, and then I'll hopefully be able to export things as normal in a high definition, and things will hopefully not look terrible or sound too terrible. If you don't want to hear, sorry about my myriad of computer problems, just skip the next sort of 3 or 4 minutes to the low friction updates. Skip the high friction updates bit here. But in short, wrap up. We've done every kind of cleanup, virus scan, malware cleanup, antivirus, everything, gazillion restarts obviously, and so far since uninstalling that program, no further crashes in the since this morning. However, things are still just running so hot for such little usage of the CPU. It's just not making any sense. So if there's any further hints and tips on the next steps, let me know, because I don't want to be throwing away a very expensive laptop. I'm hoping to get a bit more time out of it. But yeah, if it continues anything like this last week, that has just been unworkable. And it has been lucky that so far I have not used some of my mineral turpentine to start a little bonfire for my laptop. Let's see how today goes though. If we don't have a mini fire here by the end of this filming, that'll be a pretty good outcome. All right, let's skip to low friction updates. Or I was really hoping to obviously have the bit of an update on the candle wax test. Yeah, apologies, it's just been a nightmare week. We've been running really behind all week, just keeping up with the day-to-day. So I've barely even been able to have the test machines running, which means the chain stripper testing is running behind, getting through Hot Wax X single application longevity testing is running behind. But we'll hopefully start to push things. I'll try to get some more intervals running through the weekend and push on better next week if I'm not spending so much time on my damn computer. But yeah, I can say that we're getting there. We've finished block 4. Just from the running sheet, it looks like it's actually going overall, relatively impressively. I may have picked a pretty good candle wax. So I'll really try to make sure I've got the update on that test next week. Just apologies, haven't had a chance to put it across onto the data sheet for the PC, but it's going, and we'll really try to get through more of the test. I should be able to finish at the end of block 5 by end of next week, and we'll have another block starter and see how it's comparing. So that will be that one. Some updates on a couple of the videos. Thank you to viewer Mialo, who put in a really good recommendation. I should have thought of it myself before, but on the finish line dry lubricant detail review, mentioned about using the median value for the graphs and data as opposed to the average value. And considering how some of the porous lubricants have tested, how poorly they've tested, which can really skew the average, using the median will probably be a much better way to go. So I likely will switch to that for upcoming detail reviews. So thank you, Mialo, for getting my little cogs in gear on that one. Also, thank you to viewer Wattology, who commented on the non-round video with regards to an excellent podcast interview with Professor Jim Martin on the Endurance Innovations podcast. So that's a great podcast. I've been really lucky to have been interviewed by those guys before, a couple of times actually. So really good guys to chat to, and they had a brilliant chat with Professor Jim Martin, he's basically been the leading guy looking into crank lengths and a whole bunch of efficiencies that that may come or not come from different crank lengths, and why shorter tends to work better than longer. Also, as part of that discussion, delves into the world of non-round chain rings and really where the evidence from his side sits. There's overall a lot of great information covered in that chat that I think if you were in any way interested in the video on the non-round rings, that podcast I think you'll have a great time with. It's really a very engaging chat. This Jim Martin is outstanding at explaining a bunch of things that and just in a really interesting way as well. So it was a great podcast. I've put a link to that pinned comment on that video as well as in the description. But basically, Endurance Innovations podcast, the one going back a little while now with Jim Martin. But if stuck, just have a look at that non-round YouTube video that we did a couple of vids ago, and the link is in there. Really highly recommend listening to that one. All right, that will do. Let's get into today's fun chat. Alrighty, what is going on with what your local bike store is choosing to stock and recommend, and why? And is that potentially eating through your drivetrain components much more quickly than lubricant options that through the zero friction cycling testing that that we believe are vastly superior. So you may have noticed, it may or may not be the case with your particular local bike store, but if you have a look at what they're stocking, a lot of times it can be quite sort of, I guess, legacy brands, and a number of them, if you have a look at how they've performed on the Zero Friction Cycling Testing League table, can be really, really bad, either sort of mid-pack at best or trending much further down the table. Now, the Zero Friction Cycling testing, its I guess its strength is that it's simple and robust, and that it's wear correlation based. So if a lubricant through the Zero Friction Cycling test eats through the chain at a rapid rate, then that lubricant is obviously not remaining low friction. It flat out takes friction to eat through the steel components of the chain at a rapid rate of knots, and if it's doing that, then it's going to be doing that also with your other drivetrain components. Obviously, what normally happens is if it eats through your chain past that 0.5% wear rate recommendation, once your chain is past that wear rate mark, it will then merrily eat through your cassette and chain rings to suit its ever-growing elongation past that point. And that will be happening quite rapidly with the poor lubricant options. Now, the proven top products, despite being hit with a whole bunch of abrasive contamination through the test block 2, abrasive contamination as well as water in test block 4, going all the way through, if they make it that far into the test, to the extreme contamination block. If a lubricant is remaining impressively extremely low wear through the Zero Friction Cycling test, then that lubricant is remaining very low friction. It's protecting the chain from wearing, which is going to be protecting your drivetrain components from wearing. And if your drivetrain components are sort of have any sort of a decent cost to them, which is really most drivetrain components these days are ranging from, one would say, reasonably costly to extremely costly, then this kind of wear rate correlation and data really matters. So why would bike stores be stocking products that are really mid-pack at best to showing to be pretty much like a liquid bastard file at worst, as opposed to products that are really wear protective? So let's have a bit of a chat about that. Right, now obviously every bike store is going to be individual. Every person in charge of the bike store and products is going to be very individual, so I can't put things into a million boxes. We're going to put them initially into some broad-based boxes, and it's going to be very interesting to see if your thoughts sort of align with mine, or if you think I'm completely off the mark, or you may have further input. We'll see by the end of the vid. But broadly speaking, I'm going to sort of put what's happening at the moment into, I think, probably 4 main categories. So one is going to be their stocking based on legacy knowledge. They're going to be stocking based on brand name recognition, based on products that are an easy sale, and based on, obviously, what's important, profit margin. So we'll go through those, or each of those, in a little bit more depth, and they will link up, obviously. But let's have a look at the first one. So legacy knowledge. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Now, this is just something that's really, I guess, come to me from my own experience over time with some bike stores and bike mechanics. And that is that what I think happens on occasion. Now, some are brilliant at learning for life, and that is something we should all be doing. The moment you stop learning, that's a bad thing. So imagine we got a bike mechanic who's started off, and he's like a sponge, he or she. They are learning, obviously, from their peers that have been in the business for a long time and are their mentors and teachers. And they will be absorbing what they can from really anyone who has more knowledge and experience than they do, as they are on their journey, working hard to becoming a great, bike mechanic. There can tend to come a time where they reach a certain level of experience, be that after 10 years, might be 20 years, some knowledge they seem to want to put into I guess a bit of a locker and draw a line. It's like, I have been shown by Alberto Contador's personal mechanic that the best way to clean and lubricate a chain is using this product with this method and then lubing with this product. And from that point on, that knowledge is in a vault, and it is to be defended against any and all new information that may come along that says there's potentially a superior product or a superior method. So they can tend to become very defensive about their, I guess, the knowledge that they have on a particular topic, and very, very resistant to updating that with new information and new knowledge. And that's not a great place to be. So if somebody has, I guess, sort of locked away where they are at with regards to how best to clean and lubricate a chain, and that's been the case for the last 20 or 30 years, it is potentially the case that there are better products and better information that they could be updating to now, but they're just sticking to a strict dogma of, that's what I know, and I am, basically going to my grave with that is the best way to do that particular task. Okay, so a lot of local bike stores will tend to, gravitate to brand names that have been around for a long time and have that easy recognition. So it may also, as opposed to, I guess, tenure in the industry, like a brand name like Finish Line, White Lightning, Rock and Roll, it may be products that have, hit the market in the more relatively recent years, be it the last 5 years or even 10 years, but that have hit the marketing front really hard. So they've just built up that, name recognition. The more, ease of, brand name recognition we have, there's a bit of a link there to, we perceive that to be something reputable and dependable. Because if it's just kind of plastered into your mind, it's an easy name that you recognize, you've seen, heard of it from somewhere, quite a bit. There just seems to be a link between that brand name recognition and the dependable and reliable, sort of product, which, as we know from testing, really may not be the case. But it's an easy sell in a lot of cases for the bike store, and that is what a lot of bike stores need. So this is going to link into the next main category. Right, many bike stores, the staff will be hopefully pretty busy and with a whole bunch of stuff to do. And their main aim is probably going to be selling you hopefully high value items like bikes, or getting your bike in for a good service, things like that. There can be, I guess, a limited amount of time that they will want to put on selling a bottle of lubricant for, maybe $15 to $20. So if it's going to take them 15 to 20 minutes to try to move you across to a higher end lubricant, even if they, sell for say $50 as opposed to $15, quite often the percentage margin, they might make a few more dollars over the $15 one, but it's not massive. It's not necessarily going to be something that, yes, it's worth the time to make an extra $5 or $7 by selling a fancy $50 bottle of lubricant if it's going to take me 30 minutes of convincing the customer that this is the best way to go, as opposed to selling them a $15 to $20 bottle of lubricant of an easy brand name that they're just going to say, if I say that this is a good product, they're just going to buy it and apply it. And it's a 30-second sale as opposed to a 30-minute sale. So really they need that. A lot of times just something that is going to just be, tell the customer it's a great product from a brand you can trust. It's a brand we all know, they've been around a long time, and it's only $15 or $20 and you'll have a good time. They know that most customers, and this is something that obviously we're trying to change, most customers unfortunately do not in any way track their chain's wear rate. So they don't have that link at all with regards to how the product is, tangibly performing. What customers tend to like is if it's hopefully clean. A lot of the times the biggest complaint as to why they may not run a lubricant is if it gets quite dirty. They just want something that will stay at least ballpark kind of clean, and if it does that, they are relatively happy, and they will just bring their bike back for service at X, and if the bike store tells them they need a new chain and cassette, they just go, that's fine. The lubricant claimed that it did a whole bunch of wonderful things, so and the bike store recommended it to me as a great lubricant. I gather if I went with something else, things may well have been even worse. So I'll still have that tacit trust in the person at the bike store who sold me this product, and tacit trust in that product and the brand. And it just keeps things super easy for the bike store when they know 99% of the time, pretty much no matter what they send them out the door with, then the customer is in no way going to be able to assess the performance of that product and if that recommendation was good or terrible. So they kind of get an easy one there, and why if no one's going to notice if you're going to sell them a much better product that's going to take you a lot longer to sell, just go the easy path. Okay, obviously, profit margin is a very important part of a product consideration. Most times products will be within a range, and that range is not going to be anything vastly unusual. So a recommended retail price for a product X, there will be an importer for that particular brand. So the importer purchases from that brand's manufacturing. They get importer rates. They then sell at a wholesale price to a bike store or online store, and then the bike store will obviously be selling after that. So there's typically, say you're going to have your 3 layers in there. So let's say, for instance, if I'm buying or if I'm selling a product from, say, Silca, I will be purchasing that from Echelon Sports, who are the importer for Silca. So they have a wholesale price. The gap between obviously that wholesale price and my retail price is going to be my profit margin, factoring in things like shipping costs and GST and stuff like that eats things a little bit. And Echelon will have purchased the product direct from Silca at importer rates so that they can make a profit margin on selling to retailers at wholesale rates. Now, typically we want to make, if we can, somewhere around the sort of 40-ish% margin, so it's viable to actually sell. So every product has some level of service time requirement, potential warranty, support time, things like that. So it needs to be worth the time to actually spend the money and having the stock on the shelf, having that money tied up with stock, make a viable profit from the products that you're selling. Some products can be lower and makes it a little bit more difficult to stock, even if you kind of do like the product. It's a really low margin, and it can be almost really just not worth the time. It's almost like break even when you factor in actual staff time for that lower margin if it gets to around the 20% mark. And some products will have a high margin, and that makes it obviously more attractive because you've got staff and bills to pay, and you want to actually make some profit for yourself for your hard work so that you can eat and have fun and all those kind of normal things. So profit margin for sure is a big deal. Right, now I can say with pretty big confidence that in general a lot of your legacy products, the margins on those can be pretty high. And that's simply because the cost to make those products will typically be very low. They've been making them for 20, 30 years. So that production facility is, whatever R&D went into investing into making that product or coming up with it 30 years ago and getting production up and running, that has been paid off decades ago by the manufacturer. They're now just living on that, product name and brand name recognition. So their cost to
manufacture and bottle that product is just super low. What that means is they can then offer, wholesale prices, and obviously starting initially, importer prices that are really attractive to the importer, who can offer wholesale prices that are really attractive to the retailer, because then when they sell them at the what's a competitive RR or recommended retail price in that particular product category, if their wholesale price has been really attractive versus that recommended retail price, then that makes it more attractive to stock, especially if it's an easy sale. So now a lot of the legacy products will fit into that category, but there are some other brand names that I guess can really push this hard. So some of this information is anecdotal, so I can't state it as fact. However, I have had it from multiple sources over time. Now, I know that multiple anecdotes don't make data, but it does sort of match up, I guess, some information to a degree. That there are some brands such as Muck Off that simply have a really clever, or what I think is a very clever commercial strategy, such that they can, A, have some really attractive profit margins to begin with, but B, they can offer things to stores, and this has come out of the United States. So I haven't heard of it happening here, but I have had bike store owners from the United States email me to say, hey, the Muck Off rep came out and advised that if we stocked exclusively Muck Off for our lubricants and cleaning products, that we would get guaranteed 70% margin on all Muck Off products. So that's pretty attractive. And the clever part with Muck Off as well, obviously, is that they have apart from all the powerful marketing that they do, they've got a very flashy website. So a lot of bike store owners, if they are not aware of, say, the zero friction cycling testing, and I'd love to think that every bike store owner in the world was, but alas, I'm just not that well known or that popular. So, to I guess give a lot of bike store owners, not put them under a bus or anything, at the end of the day, to them, it can seem like a great win-win. They've got the rep giving them a flashy presentation, and they can refer to their website, which has, if you didn't sort of know any better, you would go through all the testing and development and the equipment that they have. The presentation of information from the Muck Off website, it's a really powerful approach to actually selling. So a lot of people will see what they have on the website and just be convinced that there is probably not a high-tech, high-performing product out on the market. And so there's no reason to think that a bike store owner won't be of the same boat and think, wow, this is a win-win. It's going to be a great product for my customers and great margins for me. Why wouldn't I, stock this product, or even exclusively stock this product, or the Muck Off line? So there can be some really powerful commercial strategies out there from the likes of Muck Off, and I'm sure there are others that are doing similar as well. But obviously it does speak to, what's the net cost to produce the product, when they're able to offer such great margins, because if they're able to offer those margins, to the retailer, and there are layers in between that, and it's, let's say the product is selling for around, $20 if it's something like a, C3 dry lube or C3 wet lube. The net cost to produce that is, let's just say, not high. So that can give a hint sometimes to what may underline the performance of the product as well, if it's dirt cheap to actually produce, as opposed to some of the actual really high-tech stuff that's actually tested outstandingly, despite the torturous situations it's submitted to through the ZFC testing. Okay, so yeah, really, what do we do with that fun little knowledge chat? So at the end of the day, one of the main goals from Zero Friction Cycling is to improve the products that you're purchasing for yourself, wherever you may be in the world, that's going to give your chain and therefore drivetrain components the longest lifespan possible, in a manner that's easy for you to use that product. Obviously, if immersive waxing is not for you, perhaps the combo approach of immersive wax, use a wax strip lubricant in between that's compatible, and then immersive wax to reset every, say, fifth relube. If immersive waxing is off the table completely, then especially if you ride off-road,
You really need to be on a wax-based lubricant as opposed to a wet, because wet and dust, it just sticks and becomes a grinding paste. If a bike store or bike sales or mechanic is recommending you a wet lubricant and you are a gravel or a mountain bike rider, you should have a really serious chat to them about their knowledge of bicycle chain lubrication and get them updated. If it wasn't obviously logical to them that wet and dust is not a great mix. There are times, without me going, too much of a tangent or segue, yes, there are times when a wet lubricant is going to be what you're going to need to run off-road for certain specific situations, but on the whole, wet, dust, grinding paste, that's the pathway there. So what we want to get is just the basics of at the end of the day, customer-led decision making based around some simple knowledge of what products should they be having a look at, and what products would they hope that their bike store is stocking and why. And if their bike store is kind of stuck in the past, or stuck on products that have been, I guess, tested extremely poor, but maybe they're making them great margin, some decisions have to be made potentially by the customer because at the end of the day, dollars talk. If a store is stocking, let's just say all they have in there is muck off and finish line and white lightning, that's probably not a great place for you to be buying your chain lubricant from. Again, just have a look at some of the wear rates, especially in block 2. Once we start to add contamination for the products tested in those lines, and then have a look at the cost of what your components may be if you're riding in gravel and off-road, or say SRAM Explore, SRAM T-Type, even SRAM Eagle, Shimano XT or XTR, and just think, do you want a liquid bastard file running on your components, or would you like something in the top 10 or top 15 that remains just so low wear despite being hit, with abrasive contamination? And again, if they're recommending to you a wet lubricant product out of that range and you ride off-road, you just really have to question where their, I guess, knowledge base is at and where their customer focus commercial strategy is at. So what comes up is people can, especially say back in the workshop days, I'll be seeing them face to face, or even these days via email. I went to my bike store and they told me that immersive waxing's crap, and they sold me this, X wet lube of X brands that we spoke about before. Or I went to my bike mechanic and they told me that wax lubricants are crap, just in general, like wax strip, wax, doesn't matter, they're crap. Use this, and they sold them again whichever legacy or high brand name, high margin product that they like to sell. Again, they may or may not be aware of any of the zero friction cycling testing and wear rate data, but to have something blanket such as if they are just completely against wax or wax strip lubricants, I would say their knowledge has probably not been updated in a very long time, and they may be somewhat defensive of the knowledge of what's the best chain lubricant, and that's not a great place to be. So I think I'd mentioned on a previous video, really we've seen such a dramatic I guess growth in both the immersive wax and wax strip lubricant space for the bicycle industry, and for pretty much for pretty obvious reasons. That's borne out in the wear rate test data from what we do. And it's a bit, I guess you can sort of liken it a bit to say like the tubeless uptake initially with mountain bike and gravel, and obviously the strong growth of that in road. There are simply advantages. It doesn't suit everybody. There are cases where going tubeless is not suitable. There's a bunch of my own bikes and wheels that I have not converted to tubeless simply because I rotate through a lot of bikes. A particular set of wheels can sit around for a long time, and so all I'll end up with a lot of the times is a patch of dried sealant in the tyre, making it unbalanced. However, in a lot of other bikes it does make a ton of sense, because
I don't have to faff with the tube. It's faster, and it's going to seal the small punches that I might get. So that is why the industry, especially at the World Tour level, has trended towards road tubeless. Their main, obviously impetus for that is that it is faster. There are not many World Tour teams now running tubular. If we go forward another 5 or 10 years, tubulars will be so, if not completely gone, they will. I think they're mostly gone from the roadside already, apart from maybe some teams in Paris-Roubaix. We're kind of seeing a little bit like that with, wax and bicycle chain lubrication, simply because the waxes, inherently, as part of their properties, they are more resistant to absorbing dust contamination, and your chain is extremely hard working and operating completely exposed to the elements and whatever airborne dust is out there, and especially obviously off-road, dust coming off the trails. So they just have some inherent advantages over wet lubricants, where, just thanks to the laws of physics, every particle of airborne dust will stick on contact. So if your person is telling you that wax lubricants are, just carte blanche blanket crap, that's a sign that you may need to talk to somebody else. Right, so credit to bike stores that I know they're, over time I have been contacted by a number over the years from all around the world that have moved the terrible tested products off their shelves and replaced them with the top tested products, and that has been fantastic for them and for their customers. I do know there are unfortunately bike stores that, even once they know that they are really not treating their customers great, they will still stock them, just because of the brand name, ease of sale, the hopes that the customer will sort of maybe keep coming back and buying more chains and cassettes and potentially chain rings more frequently than if they sold better products. If you think that may be your bike store, and you still like them, just have a proper chat with them about what they should be stocking. They can dismiss myself and Zero Friction Cycling after they've had a look, but they should at least have a look and see if they can integrate the information, as opposed to just be really defensive and stick to just super old dogma. So there's going to be every level of great and brilliant bike stores down to the most dodgy operators, and obviously everything in between. You have to be, I guess, cognizant of what your bike store is doing for you. If they're only stocking the aforementioned brands that are not great at all, you have to have a bit of a chat with them if you still want to be buying lubricants from them, as to maybe can they look at stocking something that's actually testing outstanding, as opposed to only products that test as though they want to eat through your components as fast as physically possible. So really, it's going to come down to yourself tracking your chain lubricants performance data with a chain wear checker and tracking your kilometers. It's going to come down to you talking to your friends, try to get as many of those doing the same. It's going to come down to having a chat with your bike store with regards to what products they are stocking. Have they seen the Zero Friction Cycling testing and data, and what are their thoughts? Would they consider stocking some of the top tested products to add to their range, as opposed to just old legacy or really poorly tested products? So it's going to come down to, like in everything at the end of the day, decisions are made based on where the dollars flow. If people keep buying the terrible products and it's an easy sale for the bike store and high margin, they're going to keep on stocking them. They're not going to give up shelf space to products and brands that have spent a whole bunch of money trying to get that product developed and get that product actually into volume production and marketed and out there, and then they need to try to make that money back. If we want those brands to succeed, they need to be supported, and a lot of those brands just will never get a look in or a spot on a bike store shelf when this other crap is taking up all the shelf space, because it just sells easy, and it maybe brings their customers back to buy drivetrain components more frequently. So the cyclists, the consumers, are going to need to be the ones that drive the change for the bike stores, and that's going to happen with your shopping behavior, and it's going to happen by you having a chat to your bike store about it. All right, that will do. I apologize again if this was more rambly and less well structured sentences than normal. Basically, one take wonder due to time, and I'm just going to hope that it came across semi-coherently and in some sort of structure that and chat that made sense. Let me know. I will hopefully have the computer hasn't crashed through this, so at least that's something. And if it doesn't crash on me every 10 minutes during next week, I will be in a better place with work and a better place with hopefully I would actually prep somewhat the next vid or retake little film clips that I did a terrible job on actually speaking. Anyway, off to the next one. Thanks for bearing with me, everybody. I hope you have a great weekend of cycling. I think we've got good weather here, so I am going to look forward to having a grand old time out there, and I will look forward to your comments and catching you on the next one.